Happy Sunday, everybody. And we have hashtag Showcase Sunday today, and the amazing Laura Pointon, who is here from JMW Solicitors LLP in Manchester. They have got offices in Liverpool and London, but she's joining us today to talk all about employment law and what you can do in the hospitality industry, because the Showcase Sundays helps and supports our amazing industry to bring experts in and actually help and advise you of how to progress during these times. So let me introduce you to Laura. Laura, would you like to introduce yourself and tell me what you do, why you do it, and obviously who you are?
Thank you, Alison. It's great to be with you this morning. As you've said, I'm Laura Pointon. I'm a senior associate in the employment team in Manchester, working at JMW Solicitors. The firm as a whole is a full service law firm. As you've touched on, we've got Manchester office, London office and Liverpool office. I'm based in the Manchester office, and I deal with, on a day-to-day basis, the employment issues on behalf of many respondent businesses and some individuals as well. I think when people ask me about why I do what I do, I expect that people always think, oh, you know, you always wanted to be a lawyer. This is what you wanted to do from a young age. And actually, Alison, that's not the case. I was quite a sporty individual, and I actually applied to university to do a psychology degree. Unfortunately for me, or fortunately, however which way we want to look at it, I got viral meningitis. And I ended up changing my degree to a law degree. And I think law found me, and I think law found me because I'm quite a passionate, moral compass-led individual, and I like to work on behalf of people that may not be as confident or strong to sort of raise issues and get help themselves. So that's why I do what I do. I've certainly worked in the industry now over 13 years. I've helped many businesses in terms of achieving their goals, and still get quite a lot of pleasure out of the day-to-day job that I do. I really enjoy it. Excellent.
And I have employed you before, Laura, in previous positions in the hospitality industry, and I totally agree. Your moral compass is absolutely spot on. I'll just quickly touch on an element that I had years ago where it was a risky area in all sense, but my morals and values, everybody who knows me, are very strong. And I had an individual who lied, said they'd broken their leg and that they were going to go home. And what I did find out is they'd not broken the leg at all.
Right.
I had a paediatrician in a different language send a sick note in, and the Home Office actually told me to pay them sick pay, but my morals, values, ethics and values were really strong, and I felt it wasn't okay for our business but our country to actually pay this out, considering it was all under a lie. And I came to you straight away to say this is what the situation is, and I've got evidence that that said person was dancing in nightclubs live. So there was no way that there was it was true, and I had evidence that it was all untrue, and you helped me and guide me all the way through that situation, to actually save the business time, money, energy, because what really bothered me as well is I couldn't employ somebody else for the whole duration if I hadn't have dealt with it until that person was back, and they weren't coming back. So it was going to, cause a real issue, and moral motivation and morale, motivation, and everything within the team. So Yes, definitely. I can vouch for what you just said. So what's unique and different about you and your business? I know you're in Manchester and you've also got offices in Liverpool and London. What is unique and different about you and your business, Laura?
I think if we talk about the firm first, we have an in-house employment team, obviously, in all locations, but in Manchester we have a dedicated expertise in the hospitality sector. This is headed up by my good colleague Marcus Dillafisi, who's got over 24 years experience in advising hospitality clients. I work with Marcus on a day-to-day with those clients and some clients of my own as well, and therefore the actual expertise that we've got in this sector is I think in the Northwest is unchallengeable, and what that allows us to do is to work with the clients in a way, as you've just explained, Alison, to achieve the goals. We're frequently saying to them, what do you want to achieve? And we work back from that in order to work through the legislation, the requirements, the regulations, to try to get those clients achieving exactly what it is that they want to achieve. So I think as a firm, that is our USP. For myself personally, I've also worked in-house. So I've worked in what we call a private practice, as JMW Solicitors is, but I've also worked in a business. And what that's allowed me to do is actually deal with employees on the front line. So I have practical and commercial experience of the difficulties that you face day to day with actually dealing with your employees. That's allowed me to basically advise clients in a way that's pragmatic, it's practical, you know, it's realistic, because, you know, I've had that experience of myself, and boy, is it difficult.
It is, and it is challenging, especially and like you say, you know, when you're in it and you're
Yes.
working. You know, a lot of hospitality owners and managers right now are telling me that they are firefighting, trying to keep the wood from the trees at the moment. They're trying to keep the doors open. They've got pandemic, they've got supply issues. I mean, you couldn't write it right now, what's going on in the industry. And also with the guest expectations being higher than they've ever been. And it's causing all sorts of challenges within the industry. It's causing challenges with people who are working in it, but also managing the people who are trying to deal with abusive people, socially inept people. And, you know, what do you do that currently helps the hospitality industry right now, and what helps the future of the industry?
I think you're absolutely right, Alison. We've come back into the hospitality world in an even more fast pace than what it was. I think the difficulty is that the hospitality sector, unfortunately, and I'm not entirely sure why, has never been seen as a profession. So because of that, and because of COVID, and because of Brexit, the challenges that you've explained and are experiencing, we are experiencing as well with our clients. So the way that we're helping with them is we know it's fast paced. We know that if they need to speak to somebody, and it's no cliche, they need to speak to us, and they need to be able to get that advice and nip it in the bud very, very quickly. So via email, calls, and we walk them through that process, whatever that may be, from sickness to holidays to dealing with a pandemic to changes in terms and conditions. We are very, very reactive in terms of the advice that we give. As well, I think the other aspect that we can bring to the table is, because we have a lot of clients in the sector, we have that internal sort of knowledge base, so that when things are starting to pick up in certain areas, for example, I can give you sort of in the Manchester scene, there was a few years ago where it was picked up that sort of HMRC were going in to do checking. So we sort of communicate with our clients to give them the intel. So that intel helps as well, because we've got that. I think one of the big things at the moment is sponsorship licenses, though. So helping in businesses in terms of recruitment on sponsorship licenses, because we've obviously had a lot of people leave the sector that will come over here from different countries. And we're also helping a lot of people bringing employees back from the furlough scheme. Those pieces of advice will continue. I think the other thing to bear in mind is the employment tribunal system shut down. So we've got a situation at the moment where that system was already falling over. Coupled with Brexit and coupled with the pandemic, the litigation level has gone up. But what is happening is the claims are getting stuck into the system. We're getting a deluge now of claims coming through, and we're helping many, many clients in terms of dealing with those litigation claims.
Wow, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we always think it's just one element, then you go another level deeper, and then 7 levels deep, and you're right in it. And it's great that you've got the intel, because I know I get similar conversations throughout the whole of the country. I know who the ICO is going to start going after next, and I keep going on about GDPR.
Yes.
And that's another element in itself, and the hospitality industry really needs to get on top of that, especially with track and trace, you know, the elements there, if they've not got that right and they've not, you know, been GDPR compliant. But also it's a HR bit as well with that, and a lot of people don't realise that is another biggie. You know, if you've got a drawer with all your employees' files in and it's not logged.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because what we tend to see is at certain points, certain types of claims coming through, or an influx of types of issues. So at the moment, it's returning to the hospitality environment in whether the individuals feel that is a safe working environment. So we're getting a lot of queries about how businesses can handle that. But we tend to get an intel as to what is happening. But GDPR is massive, and I think it's something that maybe hospitality businesses, as many other sectors, don't necessarily understand very well, or therefore they don't turn their minds to it, and it can be a real issue if you do get a data subject access request. From a management time perspective, it could really grind your business to quite a bit of a halt.
Yeah, massively. And then with the addition of 4% of your global turnover is an enormous fine if you get it wrong. And there's all sorts going on out there at the moment with regard to that. But you're right, there's so much going on, there's so much out there. I know I've passed a client on to you about sponsorship opportunities, because they have now been a year looking for qualified chefs. They are like gold dust, because lots of chefs haven't come back to the industry. That's number one. Lots have decided to just work for themselves now, because they've found that they can do that, and it was already short anyway. So I know my client was saying, well, what do I do? And I said, well, whenever you're in a situation where you can't recruit locally in the UK, say locally nationally in the UK, then what you do is you look abroad, but then you need specialist advice and guidance. Because when I did it in my past life as a hotel general manager, it was very different to how it is now. There's so many legal issues around it, so many red tape, and if you get it wrong, it's a lot of money that you waste. So, and you held that, I know you've alluded to that.
Yeah, the sponsorship license area is something we're helping a lot of clients with on a daily basis, I would probably say, Alison, because you're absolutely right. There was a shortage with chefs anyway, wasn't there? But it really has become quite a problematic situation.
Okay, so the thing that I like to ask is top 5 tips. What are your top 5 tips, Laura?
First and foremost, I think we've already touched on a few of them, but my first one would be recruitment and retention at the moment for the hospitality sector. as I've said, unfortunately, rightly or wrongly, the sector's never been seen as a profession. And I think that's had a massive impact, because what we've got now is people don't seem to understand that from the very beginning of your recruitment process, when you are interviewing employees and even those individuals that you reject, you've got to be very careful that there is no element of discrimination in that process whatsoever, because otherwise you could be faced with a discrimination claim even right at the beginning of your process. So your retention and recruitment policies need to be clear of discrimination from the get-go. I think top tip number 2 is me being a typical lawyer, I would say, but it's absolutely important, is your contractual documentation. You've got to issue your contractual documentation now within right at the beginning. It's changed from April of last year. You used to have a period of bedding in time whereby you could give that documentation out. That's no longer the case, but it's got to be correct. It's got to be robust. It's got to be drafted bespoke to actually the business that's issuing it. So many times I see documents that have been plagiarized from other people's businesses, from off the internet, and you may not think it's an issue, but it absolutely becomes an issue when there is an issue with that individual further down the line in terms of departure. So your contractual documentation is key. I think moving on from that, top tip number 3, linking in with your contractual documentation, is don't just issue the documentation. Make sure that your employees understand it. Make sure you then train them on that documentation. How many times have I been in an employment tribunal where a judge has said to a client, Mr. Phillips, can you refer to the equal opportunities policy? Yes. Have you got a copy of that policy? Yes. When were you issued with it? I don't know. When were you last trained on it? I don't know. It's really, really easy for businesses, because of the fast pace that we're working in this sector, that you give the documentation out and then that's it. You've got to try to ensure that you are communicating and upskilling all the time. I'm not saying we have to take a day out of the business and sit people down. We can work with you in terms of how you get the communication out via email, etc. But keeping up the training on that contractual documentation, again, is just as key as issuing it. I think
it is massive when you look at that. You've really triggered, because so many people in the industry get given a massive handbook and
yes.
They say, sign here that you've read and understood it, and they've not even opened it.
Yes.
And it always freaks me out, that, because in there is all about all your health and safety, all your policies, procedures, your equal opportunities, diversity,
absolutely,
everything in there. And they're almost expecting that autograph on that on the sheet of paper, and that's not good enough. And I think I'd like to see, and I know some businesses say, well, I've not got a HR department, so I can't do that. But this is where you come in, and I'd like to see some form of quiz to make sure that people have understood it. Because in my training academy, you've got to make sure that I see, I hear, I do. If all those 3 elements are not in those documentations, they're not taking it in, and they'll not understand it. And that's where other issues down the line come, isn't it?
And you're absolutely right. And it never becomes an issue until you're on that stand in a tribunal being asked the question by the judge. And that's where it's really very important. You know, we're not suggesting that anybody does anything that they shouldn't be doing, but you've got, and I think continual training allows people to feel engaged and keeps morale high. And as we all know, happy staff means happy business. So it's keeping your staff motivated, up to date, engaged, and you know, you will reap the rewards for that as a business.
And I think it's good for business owners and managers to actually readdress, because businesses do change massively. I mean, I've seen so much diversification, innovation throughout the whole of the pandemic. And I bet you any money that there are a lot of businesses that haven't changed their handbook with all the different diversifications and innovations that they've come up with, you know, like the delivery at home and things like that, I bet they've nothing in there. And how to guide it. Yeah,
starting to see businesses asking us to draft bespoke policies around flexibility, around working from home, which obviously in this sector isn't as frequent, but we're starting to see those changes. So yes, it's keeping it up to date is key.
Yeah. Okay.
Next tip, I think we're on number 4.
Yeah.
Is engagement. We've just touched a little bit on it, but I'm finding at the moment that what's happening is employees have had that period of time in the sector. They've sat down, they've been furloughed, they've slowed down, and there is a struggle with recruitment coming through the door. So the existing staff are coming back to work, but they're a little bit apprehensive to come back to work, and they don't necessarily want to go back to the hours that they did before, and it's having a real impact on morale. Employees think that they are being told different things. So we work with our clients in the hospitality sector quite a bit around engagement. How do we get the engagement out to the workforce when you've got shift patterns, when you've got late hours? How do we ensure that the employees know that that information was given exactly the same to each and every one of them? Because if you get a word different, we all know, they know that, and why has he said that to me but not said that to her? And that can create unrest. So engagement is really, really important.
Massively, and you're right, you know, it goes around like wildfire in a business. and then suppliers get involved because they come in the back door of the kitchen and listen to it all, and then the next thing it's spreaded throughout the whole of the area.
Yeah. And then I think number 5, I don't know whether it needs to be number 1 really, is picking the phone up. Don't let the issue bubble along. I never get shocked at any issue. We never, you know, it's never something that we've not experienced or we haven't had experience in. But what always does shock me is the length of time that a business leaves an issue before they pick the phone up. And I think people don't realise that actually in terms of time management of leaving the issue alone, and also money in terms of leaving that issue alone, they can actually get themselves in a really difficult position, but for them picking the phone up and getting the advice and the expertise that they needed right at the beginning of the issue. I think a lot of businesses in the hospitality sector and outside are frightened sometimes to step to employees to deal with a situation, because we've got a world now where everybody has quite a lot of information at their instant disposal. So there is a bit of a fear culture by employers of not tackling issues. But unfortunately, I've found over the years that by not tackling the issues, actually we're making it worse. So businesses got to pick the phone up. You know, no question is a silly question, and they need to engage with us at the beginning, explaining to us what they would like to achieve, and we will get them to that point.
It's so true, and you know, I feel sometimes when I'm on the Showcase Sunday, I've got clients and I've got people in the industry going, but Alison, just ask this question. I always feel this because you know, it sets me off, and you're right. The number 1 thing is you've got to pick up the phone, because the quicker you start to deal with things, the quicker it gets dissolved and dealt with. The other issue that potentially that the industry would be asking is, you know, what would be the best thing, to have it on a retainer basis, to come in and out, to dip in and out, because there's so many different lawyers out there, isn't there, to help with HR law. There's so many, and I can see, you know, the good ones like yourself, and the ones that are a bit questionable because the morals aren't all there. And I can see, you know, when I work with businesses and I look at the P&L accounts, and I can see how much they're paying for little or no assistance or any policies and procedures done for them in the HR, or any backup or support. and I think, gosh, they're paying a lot, because I benchmark a lot as well.
Yes.
So, you know, when you look at it, your business now, what would you have? Would you have retainers, or would you have both? Because you have some big clients and you have some small clients. So
We do. We have a lot of big clients, sort of multinational corporates, from people like Travelodge, Nando's. We have businesses that are family-run businesses, and I think the answer to the question is not easy, because we're not the cheapest out there, but neither do we want to be or profess to be, because our expertise are vital and there is a value to that expertise. I have some clients that are on a retainer basis, and they will pick the phone up with the comfort knowing that they might have an ad hoc query and they can deal with that with regards to their retainer. I have other businesses that know that they're not going to need us as much as that, and will pay on an hourly rate basis. What I would say is, speak to us. Speak to us about what your requirements are. Speak to us about what the level of staff are. We get a good understanding from businesses in terms of the volume of staff, what sort of litigation exposure they have, and we bespoke the fees to suit them. I get a lot of people saying to me, oh, well, I can get it from this company cheaper than what you can do it. And I understand that, but what I will say to them is, well, are they qualified solicitors? Are they going to achieve the outcome that you actually want to achieve? You know, I keep sort of talking about our hospitality expertise. We've done this for many, many years. There's not a lot we've not seen. We can draw on that experience, and that comes with value. That value add we definitely can provide. And you know, but we can work on the pricing solution to suit the business. Because I don't think one size fits all. And it might be that some clients will say, well, we have a load of litigation. We want you to deal with the litigation, but we don't want you to deal with the general advisory work. It might be that other clients want the general advisory work, but don't get a lot of litigation. And when they do get the litigation, we then talk to them about how we can fix price that. We're not here to, you know, charge through the roof. But we can bespoke that service in terms of what that business's requirements are and needs, really, I would say.
Yeah, and it's so important, because I've been asked in the past about this, and it's valuing the worth. Now, there are many consultants out there, there's many lawyers out there, but it's what fits your business and what's the end goal.
Absolutely.
What I love about you, Laura, is that you know what you ask, what the end goal is going to be, and you help and guide, you backtrack and help and guide every single step of the way. So it makes it into bite-sized chunks rather than overwhelming when you're currently trying to manage a business through a pandemic, you know, and everything else that goes with it, the mental health and well-being of your teams, etc.
Absolutely. We like to become part of the business. We talk all the time to our clients. We're not solicitors externally. We are part of that family-run business. So it might be that they've not got a HR person in-house. We become that, and we're very passionate about the service that we provide, and we care. You know, we have employment claims and general advice, and we live and breathe that with the client as equally as they do, and we get excited about a result and we get disappointed about a result because we become part of the business.
Yeah, it's massive. That is massive. It really is, and it's music to lots of people's ears, because I know, knowing what the end result is, I've seen so many businesses where they contact me far too in it, and they say, you know, what do I do? And they're in that situation where you can say, well, go and speak to Laura, but at the time, you know, they may be in the middle of a law case. And you think, gosh, you know, if only you'd have picked up the phone earlier and we could have helped and supported you in a quicker fast track way, but more effectively within your organization, because it's a PR that comes with it. And a lot of business owners and managers forget that. They forget the element of public relations, of how your marketing can be damaged massively if you get it wrong.
Absolutely agree with you. And I think, again, because we're a full service law firm, we have lawyers within the firm that can help with PR side, we can help with the sponsorship side, we can help with the employment advice. People will contact me even now. I've got long-standing clients that I've worked with for sort of 10, 13 years that will contact me and say, Laura, can I just ask you this? That's not me, but I know this person in the firm who can do that. So we've become an extension, as I've said, of the business. But you're absolutely right. It can seriously cost your bottom line if you don't get the help as quickly as you possibly can.
Yeah, massively, as well as everything else within the organization, the whole lot.
Yeah.
So obviously we know how you add value to your clients, but if somebody was sat on the fence now, they're sat on the fence and they're saying, this sounds great, it sounds absolutely fantastic. I'm currently with this organization who's looking after me, but I've not really broached the subject yet with them about any issues. Oh, and I've not thought about GDPR, or I've not thought about sponsorship opportunities. I've not thought about bringing my team back off furlough. And if they're thinking that, I'm thinking, where have you been? Because we've got a staffing crisis. Get them off furlough. Or they've not thought about all the different elements that potentially could affect them massively. What would your current clients or your past clients say, you know, would be, get off that fence and actually contact Laura direct? It's worth that phone call. What would they say?
I think my clients would say I am a very pragmatic, passionate lawyer. I don't sit on the fence with my advice. If a client comes to me and wants a view, they want to achieve X goal, and I will get them to that goal, but I will explain to them along the way about the risks associated with achieving that goal. A lot of my clients say to me, and you can have, you know, they can all have a look on my LinkedIn profile because I've got many recommendations on there. I think the consistent theme is my pragmatic, clear approach. I become part of the business. The issue becomes my issue. And I think that is the case for the employment team as a whole. We genuinely want to help. We're genuinely passionate. We will work from cradle to grave to achieve the outcome that the business wants to achieve. I'd say give us a go. People may say on paper, but you're going to cost more. But I bet we will save the business money in terms of the approach and the advice that we give in comparable to other firms and other consultants, because we've got that industry expertise and we've seen it and we've done it and we've got the t-shirt, and we've got that humanistic side. We're not lawyers, we're people, so we deal with people in a people to people fashion, and I think that's what helps.
Yeah, and I think the beauty is as well, because I've seen another element which we've not broached on yet, but I just wanted to broach on it. Another element in the industry right now, a lot of business owners and managers have been recruiting a little bit faster than they would normally do and taking on people they wouldn't normally take on.
Yes.
And it's not boding well in their organization long term, and they would obviously need help and advice how to handle that, because, you know, or whether they could come up with a cracking result, you know, in training and developing somebody rather than just getting rid of. But I've seen so many bad decisions made in the, and I get it, I'm not judging anybody or comparing anybody by any means, that's not what I do. But I'm also very aware and very clear about it, that it needs to be dealt with now, that bad decisions when you're firefighting happen, and it's okay. but go to an expert like Laura, who can help and guide you to get the right outcome, goal and objective, because that I can see a big issue coming in the next year or so, you know, if that's not dealt with now.
I think sometimes people are frightened to talk to us. They think that they're not going to understand what we say, but I can guarantee that myself, Marcus, you won't feel like that. We are people, and you know, we don't judge, as you've said, Alison, quite rightly. A business can get themselves into a situation, and we genuinely want to help you get out of it, and as quickly and as efficiently as you possibly can. It's difficult, it's fast paced, it's sometimes high turnover. We've got dealings now with people's morale, well-being coming back from COVID, health and safety. I think it's a tougher time than it's ever been, and the hospitality sector was tough anyway, but it's even more tough coming out of this pandemic.
And I think understanding as well, in which you can help with the mental health and well-being. There are a lot of people who have been with an organisation for a number of years, and then suddenly they may have found that they're redundant and trying to find another job, etc. Yes. There are people coming back off furlough who've been with an organisation for a number of years. They've had a massive setback financially. They've probably been struggling, because they've been on 80% of their wages when they were trying to make ends meet at the best of times on 100%. And then there's people who've lost relatives and friends due to COVID. There's also been, and this is a big thing for me, because I remember years ago when I went on maternity leave, so this wasn't in a pandemic, but I was advised at the beginning, go and join as many groups as you can, because I'm a people's person.
Yes.
Not very good when I'm on my own.
No.
Whether I'm with a baby or not, I needed people. And the industry forgot that everybody who went on furlough then potentially was on their own. And that's another factor, that, you know, having someone like you to help and support the people coming back from potentially massive changes in their lives.
Yes.
So dealing with the grieving process that brings with it, and how to help and support them. So it doesn't have to be how to get rid of people or how to deal with redundancies, which was probably your biggest thing last year. But it's also how to actually get the right goals and objectives for each member of the team, who was probably brilliant prior to the pandemic and has gone through a heck of a change afterwards, I would suggest.
I think you're absolutely right. People have been affected in so many different ways, and they may not be the individual that went off on the pandemic. And it's at that engagement again. It's the engagement, it's the understanding, it's the listening, it's the communication. It's how can we adapt to that situation, if at all. What do they want to be doing? How do we achieve it? Can we achieve it? That's all really, really difficult. And I think the well-being aspect is going to be something that will grow and grow and grow as people start to come out of furlough more and more and more.
Yeah, because the other element that really shocked me a few weeks ago, when somebody actually said, I've got a real problem. And this was an employee. It was a top-end director in a business, but an employee for an organisation, without obviously breaking any confidentiality rules here. And they said, we are really worried because my uniform is normally such a thing. Now, as a business owner, you can wear whatever you want, can't you? But if you've got a certain uniform that you've got to adhere to in a corporate world,
yes,
and pandemic had actually put quite a bit of weight on this person, and they didn't know how to broach the subject with their employer. And that was the director of a company, which was interesting.
Yeah.
And I thought, because mentally, in all essence, it had changed their thought process.
Absolutely. It's a great example. of how people have changed physically and mentally over this period of time, and how people might think that they're okay, but actually they're not, and they don't re-establishing themselves in that service sector, dealing with people. I mean, people expectations and standards have gone up. People may not be behaving as well as they have done because we've been restricted for some time, and dealing with all those types of behavioural aspects while they're trying to just undertake the world of work as well. We've got ladies that have been on maternity leave that have not really been on maternity leave because they've not been able to leave the house, and their child hasn't been able to engage with anybody else. How are they feeling in terms of coming back to the world of work? As you touched on, the financial aspect as well, how have people survived? Are they worried about debts that have possibly mounted up over this time? That will have a massive impact on people in terms of how they perform.
It's massive, and it's about getting that clarity from yourself of actually understanding the other side too, because a lot of business owners said, yeah, but Alison, I've been working every day throughout the whole of the pandemic, and I just want the team to work like they did beforehand. And,
yes.
And I say, that's great, but you've got to change your ethics and values right now. You've got to change that mindset, because nobody's the same that they were, not even the business owners and managers who've worked throughout the whole pandemic, you know. And hopefully we've gone past the area of them and us, because it was those who were working in it and those who weren't. There was a bit of a divide there as well that needed to be addressed in the communication element there.
Absolutely.
So Laura, how can people get hold of you? What, you know, obviously we're going to put all your links to how to get hold of you at the end of the interview, but how would you like people to get hold of you?
Everybody can have my email address. They can have my direct dial. They can have my work mobile. The best thing to do is probably drop me an email, because what that will allow us to do is, rather than having telephone tennis, if somebody calls me and I'm about to go into a meeting or I'm not available, I will always come back to them. But the easier option is to email, and we can schedule a time that is convenient for the individual business. That way I can check my calendar, I know that that's convenient for them, and we can have a chat about whatever it is that they need some assistance with.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Laura. Lots of thought-provoking information there and cracking top tips. And I think, you know, we've got to massively help support the industry to be the beacon of light, who can really shine, because I've got a massive mission as AJ Lakes to actually bring the hospitality industry as one of the leading industries in the UK for a career choice rather than one of the last things.
Absolutely.
We've got the best industry ever that's been able to diversify, innovate, been able to manage effectively and support the NHS, and it's done so many things throughout the whole pandemic. We are very proud of it, and even survived through the biggest kicking of their lives.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
proud, each and every one of them.
They should, and that's the thing. It's about celebrating every single win, and obviously, you know, celebrating every employee as well who's been able to deal with all, you know, the pandemic, all the issues with guest expectations being the worst it's ever been in a lot of senses. You know, some abusive people who don't know how to be in public vicinities anymore. But it's very interesting. So thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure to have you on today, and I'm a testament. Obviously, I've worked with Laura before in my previous role, and I'm absolutely chuffed to bits that you've been able to join me today on Showcase Sunday. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me, Alison.
You're welcome.